pasture, deciding that the colt could fly. With a final glance at the house where his paw now lay dead, Wyatt climbed onto the saddle to head for Gunnison, Colorado. Gunnison had begun as a mining town after the discovery of gold in the area. In the early days, mining proved a hazardous endeavor with the land still occupied with the Ute tribe. Howard came to Gunnison in 1859 to make his fortune. Having grown up on a ranch in Texas, he quickly decided that selling beef to the miners would be an easier and more profitable way to prosper. He sent for his bride and started a small ranch that managed to survive by bribing the Ute with a few head of cattle every year. As more white settlers came, the Utes were finally forced from their land, and with the threat from the Indians gone, the Denver and Rio Grande Western Railroad came in 1880. Large ranches soon began forming that could ship the cattle out by rail car. Due to Howard's constant drinking and lack of imagination, he never managed to expand the ranch as other larger operations surrounded his prime property. His failures were a constant source of agitation for him, and led to even more drunken nights where Wyatt bore the brunt of his wrath after the death of Sandra. As Wyatt rode toward town, he gazed at the mountain ranges around him. He'd always taken comfort in the magnificent formations. Even with seeing the peaks every day of his life, he still found them breathtaking in their grandeur. During slow times around the ranch, he would often take his Winchester 73 and go camping for a couple of days to escape his home life. Most times, he would kill a deer for food and to pack back home. But the real joy in the adventure for him was just being out in nature, with its solitude and his own thoughts, where he dreamed of a better life. He wished he were up in the mountains now. Looking in the direction of Gunnison, Wyatt's mind jumped to a day back when he was 6 years old. The annual fall festival had been taking place, and he and his parents had made the trip into town. For once, his paw hadn't touched the bottle that day and was in a jovial mood. Howard fancied himself a pretty fair dart player and took the challenge to play a game at one of the booths. Wyatt could still recall his paw's booming laugh that day as he defeated his opponent. Howard won a $5 gold piece that he gave to Wyatt. To this day, the coin resided in Wyatt's dresser drawer. Despite his paw's bad leg, he had hoisted his son on his shoulders and strutted away in victory through the midway. The memory seemed as fresh to Wyatt as the day that it had transpired, and caused him to wonder why he remembered the events from so long ago so vividly. Wyatt arrived in town and rode up to the funeral parlor. The cool early May day gave him a sudden chill, and he pulled his jacket shut. He sat on Pegasus for a good minute as he worked up the nerve to go inside the building. His paw had told him on at least a dozen occasions that he'd made all the arrangements and that all Wyatt needed to do was let Mr. Price know that he'd passed. With each retelling, Wyatt had become more convinced that his paw thought him a simpleton that could barely function on his own. He climbed down from the horse and tied his mount to the hitching rail before walking into the parlor. Mr. Price had an office off to the side of the foyer, and Wyatt could see the undertaker sitting at his desk. "May I help you?" Mr. Price called out as he rose from his chair. "Paul passed on this morning," Wyatt quietly replied. Mr. Price walked out of his office and vigorously shook hands with Wyatt. "Young man, you have my sincere condolences. Your Paul was a fine man that did his best to make a good life for you and your mother despite having a leg injury that would have felled lesser men. He certainly was a hero in my book for his sacrifices to save our beloved Union." Wyatt clenched his teeth and stared at the undertaker that continued to pump his hand. He couldn't recall ever seeing Mr. Price even smile, but now the mortician stood before him with a profound look of loss and tears welling in his eyes. The sight caused a slow rage to begin to take hold in Wyatt and brought to the surface old grievances. Back when Wyatt was 10 years old, he'd had a revelation one day while he and his Paul visited another rancher. Howard Roundtree had the ability to make everybody admire him and think of him as a successful person. The only two people that knew otherwise were the ones that actually lived with him. And while everyone was well aware of his Paul's fondness for whiskey, Howard did a masterful job of hiding the extent of his consumption.